Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. Filming this the second time because I forgot the intro. That's the kind of day I've been having. Anyway, it would get pointed out, so refilming, it's all good. Yeah, tea-themed cards for this video. I filmed a release and review video for Trinity Stamps' big 5th birthday release. It was a big release. It was fabulous. If you missed that, I'll have it linked at the end of this video. But I said in that one, I was really fixating on this little Teacup blooms set. I've got like stamps all over the place. So yeah, wanted to make these cards because they were just simmering in the back of my mind. And that's what I did. So no coloring involved either because I wasn't in a coloring mood and thought I would just play around with inks and water and see what happens. And yeah, I will also add this to my coffee playlist. I say because they're tea themed, but I've just kind of included anything in that playlist that's either or coffee, tea, hot chocolate, hot cocoa, you know, drink themed for the most part. So I will add it to that playlist. That playlist will also be linked at the end of this video because I've got quite a few videos in that playlist, and I think that's all I wanted to say. So just keep watching and I will show you how I made these cards. Alrighty then. So the first thing I did was I took one of the new Waffle Flower medium mats, and this is the one sized for the mini MISTI. So I took the covers off of it and lined up one of the alignment guides it comes with. I'm not going to get too in-depth with these. I used one in a previous video. So far, really liking them. But yeah, just testing them out as I'm creating. So the thing I do like with this size, or like these ones meant for like the MISTI, etc., is the alignment guide does not cover the entire back of it. And that way it'll still kind of stick inside the MISTI. I removed the mouse pad, you know, all that stuff. But the alignment guide keeps obviously the entire thing sticking, so I won't have to like pry it out of there, if you know what I mean. And yeah, if you want to know more about those, you go on the Waffle Flower website. They've done a blog post too about the differences between this and jelly plates and all the things. I haven't even had a chance to read all that. I need to because I like to know all the things. But my brief little bit is, so far I like them. Anyway, I took some, this first piece was just kind of a larger scrap of Ranger watercolor paper. And I've got it face up in my MISTI. I'd use my anti-static powder tool. And then I'm going to heat emboss these images from this little Teacup blooms set from Trinity. And originally I was going to do like heat emboss everything in white, but changed my mind last minute and did gold. And I'm glad I did because you can see the detail a bit better with the gold. Especially with the large cluster of florals, you know, there's just little elements that I was like, this looks better in gold. Really, honestly, it doesn't everything. So I stamped it all with clear embossing ink, coated it with gold embossing powder, melted it with my heat tool. And then I did very, very simple, not even color blending again. I'm basically just slapping color on. I've done this in different ways over the years. I've done it like with the ink pads themselves, like just direct to the paper, sprayed it with water, etc. And originally I wasn't going to even add water. Like this all kind of looks like a hot mess, but once it's die cut, you know, it's all the little blobs and everything outside the images are irrelevant. But I just added basically a rainbow of colors. And I just used my little blending brushes. And all of these inks are Concord and 9th inks. I've mentioned these off and on for a while now. I started with their original set like way back when they first released their inks, and I got the little set of ink cubes. And then when they released like all these new colors, I couldn't resist. I got the whole set of the large ink pads. And I've said this in recent videos. The ink pads themselves, like ink pads, not the ink. The ink pads, the same as Simon Says Stamps positively saturated inks. Now the ink formula, I cannot say whether or not it's the exact same because I do not know, but I consider them similar, if not the same. And then the other difference is I find that the Concord inks kind of balance out my Simon Positively inks. The Concord ones are a little more, there's a little more muted colors. Like there's some bright ones in there too that I love, but there's also more muted colors. So I just find they complement each other very nicely. And this is all me justifying having 2 full sets of inks. Anyway, so you see here, I sprayed this and nothing really happened. That's not normal. I am chalking this one up to the watercolor paper itself just being like kind of a random off piece. And I will show later in the video me spraying some and you'll see what I mean. But this second piece, I did it again on another piece of the exact same paper, Ranger watercolor paper. And you can see there how the whole thing's covered in color. I used the same inks. I did the same thing. I blended, I sprayed with water, and they immediately went everywhere. That's what I expected them to do because these inks are dye-based water reactive inks. They should, but it's funny sometimes how just, it can just be a, you know, cardstock, or even, you know, you have great experiences with that certain brand of cardstock or that certain type of watercolor paper. And every once in a while, it'll just be like an off one. And sometimes I find that, and this random little scrap just obviously was an off piece. And I'm still fine with it. Like it didn't, you know, react and move, but that's also kind of nice because it kept the colors a little more true. The other piece, the colors moved around a bit more, but yeah, it's just interesting sometimes. So I ended up, like I said, I did it twice. The second time the colors moved a lot, let everything dry. I die cut them. And as you can see, once it's die cut, it just looks so much better. And I wasn't going to do anything else to these. You could, you know, smush the inks and paint with a water brush to like intensify the colors on the blooms. That is an option. Here, I just took a Spectrum Noir tri-blend brush, like an alcohol-based marker, just to color the centers. I've also mentioned in videos, normally when it comes to heat embossed images, I do not use alcohol-based markers with that. There is something about the formula of alcohol-based markers. It, in a sense, it almost eats away at embossing. It can wreck your nibs. Like it just, it's not something I recommend. For something like this, I honestly don't care. It's tiny little details. You know, I'm just adding to the very center of the flowers. That's it. I'm kind of trying to avoid coloring over because, again, alcohol markers, just the makeup of them, they will color over embossing as well. So you'll lose like the shine of the embossing, etc. But yeah, I don't recommend like heat embossing all your images and then coloring with alcohol-based markers. It's not worth risking. Especially like my Copics, you know, I'm not willing to risk wrecking them, but there have been some makers that have been doing it for years and have no problems. I just want to mention that, you know, but I did it to add just that little bit of brown to the flower centers. And I think it just kind of helped bring the focus out a little bit more. And then I took another piece, again, Ranger watercolor paper, and I heat embossed the teacups. And I did the separate little cluster of leaves because there was all that empty space. And I was like, ooh, I can add these, you know, when I assemble everything. And this is where you'll see. So I use the Tide Pool color, and all the colors I use, I will have linked in the supplies. But see how I added only a little bit and sprayed it and it immediately started moving? That's what I was going for. And it does. That's what these inks kind of do. So, and again, it looks blotchy and messy. Ain't going to matter because I am going to die cut this. So it'll be fine. I just wanted that little bit of color because this Tide Pool color is really pretty. But that's why I kept most of the color kind of outside the teacup and then sprayed it with water, set it aside to dry. Did the same thing with this one. So I'm just adding just a little bit of this color like actually into the teacup area. And because it's heat embossed, the raised edges will contain the water that I spray because I spray this fairly heavily. And then, yeah. I sopped up some of the excess liquid so I don't have water going absolutely everywhere, which is a dry baby wipe, and then set the second one aside. And then with the leaves, I did the same thing that I did originally. I'm just adding colors kind of at random with my little blending brushes, just almost all of the different colors. And yeah, like I said, I'll have links to them, but I use like Sweet Pea, Lemongrass, Tide Pool, Clementine, Buttercup on the originals, and Lilac. And after I added that to these, I'll spray it and you'll see the color just immediately moves. So yeah, I just chalk up that first piece I used to just a random glitch in a sense, but I'm still going to use it because it's pretty. So set everything aside. And then for my backgrounds, I just took plain white cardstock, and I'm using this abstract scratch background. And I'd mentioned in my release and review video, I was like, ooh, this would look gorgeous heat embossed in gold. So of course I was like fixating on that, and that's just, I had to do it. So that's what I did. I just kept it face up, just like how I use my regular background stamps more often than not. I put anti-static powder on the white cardstock and then inked up the stamp just as it was face up on my desk and pressed the cardstock into it. And I inked it up with clear embossing ink. I didn't get a perfect impression. I ain't worried about it. Like, it's not going to matter in the end, and perfection's overrated. If you want things to be stamped better, or depending on what, I would use like my MISTI, because then you can stamp it twice, you can get press it down better, etc. But this was fine. So I did this twice. Just anti-static powder, inked up the stamp with clear embossing ink, pressed the cardstock into the background, and then I'm going to coat it with that same gold embossing powder and then melt that with my heat tool. And like I always do when I'm heat embossing, I tilt it back and forth in the light, and any dull grainy areas, that's where I missed with the heat tool. So you get that, melt it. It's all smooth and shiny and fabulous. And this background's fabulous. Any sort of like abstract, geometric, that sort of a thing. I say this all the time like a broken record, but it's true. It goes with everything. They're perfect. I love it. And this one, I really like this one. It's fun. So after I did that, I decided to die cut it with a circle die. This is the Circles Set A from Trinity. And the largest one is enormous. It's like 6 inches across or something like that. Like, this is a massive die set. So I found the size I wanted, and then just lined that up on these backgrounds, taped it into place, and then ran that through my die cut machine. So I've got my backgrounds die cut. And then the little T tags that I did at the beginning, I stamped the little For You sentiment onto them, and that comes with that little Teacup Blooms stamp set. So I stamped that with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and then I stamped the little string, that attaches to the little tag. That I stamped with Concord's Dove ink, just a nice light gray ink, and then die cut that with the coordinating little wafer die. And then the sentiments are from the Punny Cup of Tea set that I just love. I love punny sentiments, and that also this just obviously goes with anything tea themed. So I chose the sentiments I wanted. I grabbed a scrap of black cardstock. I used my anti-static powder tool on there, stamped the sentiments with clear embossing ink, and then these I used white embossing powder. Tapped off the excess, melted those with my heat tool, and then off camera I just used my paper trimmer to trim these down. So then that'll be everything basically for the fronts of the cards. And then the cards themselves are going to be top folding A2 white note cards, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm going to stamp the teacup on the insides of the cards with that Tide Pool ink. So I stamped that onto the insides of the cards. And that's the other thing to note with the Concord 9th ink pads and Simon's Positively Saturated inks. These are very... If you're used to felt ink pads, they're very firm. These obviously, they're foam. They're still a firm foam. They're not super, super soft, but you do need to use a light touch. It takes a little bit getting used to. I've had people, contact me about that. It's hard to show, I can't really show you the pressure or the lack of pressure on a video, but I very gently tap my stamps when I'm using these types of ink pads, like very gentle, or I will take the ink pad to the stamp, but same thing, very, very light little taps. Because if you mush your stamp into it, you will have ink everywhere. So it just takes a little bit getting used to, but I love how these inks stamp. So anyway, I stamped the T on the teacups because that little solid oval. I used the lemongrass for that because I was thinking, green tea. And then stamped more sentiments from the Punny Cup of Tea set on the insides. And that I used the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. So now the insides are done. To assemble the outsides, I'm just adhering everything with craft tacky glue. So I adhered the background And then I'm going to adhere the teacup and the large cluster of flowers. And before the adhesive can really dry on anything, I've got enough time to, I just tuck all the other little like individual flowers and leaves and whatnot behind the large cluster. Yeah. Nothing too groundbreaking with any of that. I've mentioned this before, like actual like floral arrangement, whether it be in real life, like florals, or arranging florals in a cluster on cards, not my forte. It's like I can do all kinds of other things, but I just, it's like my brain goes blank when it comes to arranging florals. So anywho, adhered all the things, and then yeah, just tucked in the little die cut leaves and florals and everything just in and amongst this whole little cluster. It just kind of fills it out a little bit more. So did all of that. Once I've got like everything where I want it, I just put a couple of big acrylic blocks on top of it, let that dry, repeated the process with the second card front. And then once I've got everything adhered, the sentiments I'm going to pop into place with some Waffle Flower foam tape. One of my favorites. So happened to be just the perfect thickness for that. There's something so satisfying when things just like fit perfectly, you know? So stuck that on the back of the sentiments and then popped these into place on both of these cards and made sure I put the sentiments I wanted with what I had stamped on the inside as well. So I did all of that. And then I had the hardest time off camera choosing what bling to use because, again, if you haven't watched the release and review video, which I'll have linked, Trinity released a ton of new bling, and it's all beautiful and amazing, and I love it. And I didn't need any of it, of course, but I'm still excited about it and still having fun with it. And yeah, I ended up going with the matte gold just because it just went with everything. So I put a few of the flat matte gold confetti on both of these cards, just little triangle placements, odd numbers, all those sorts of things. And then once I was happy with that, adhere them into place with dabs of craft tacky glue. Once those are all adhered, these cards are complete. So, as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. In my blog post, it's the pictures of the cards and picture links to everything, so really easy to navigate. And the supply list will also be in the description box below the video. You just got to expand it. All the links to the supplies, links to my social media, all that stuff is in the description box below. I will have a link to that release and review, and I will also have a link to my, coffee theme playlist. That will be at the end of this video as well, so you can check those out if you've missed them. And yeah, thank you guys so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping and commenting, letting the robot overlords know you guys like what you're seeing. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.